My name is Justin McDonough, but pretty much everybody calls me Dunna. I run the studio at Resonate Music School and Studio, and I make content on YouTube. Technology for me it's interesting because I am like a tech gear nerd kind of thing. Like I like to get into specs and I like to find out what every, let's say, for example, let's say what every camera in the Sony line, like what they're all capable of. But at the same time, I'm also like super budget. Like I want to find out what the best camera is for the lowest price, like where that price point is. And same thing with the recording studio. It's like I don't necessarily have the fanciest gear, but I've got lots of really cool clones of gear. I think that gear and technology is kind of important to me, but at the same time, I'm also trying to find a way to kind of game the system so that I'm not, going out of house and home acquiring all this gear that most of the time there's like diminishing returns if you start spending too much on it, kind of thing. So that's the way that I like approach technology and gear. I love my cameras and I love all my gear at the studio, and there's definitely a threshold where if you go below that, you start to see it not being good enough quality. But it's about finding that kind of sweet spot. The YouTube channel is something that I started just over a year, maybe a year and a half now ago, and I did it as a creative outlet. So when I was a teenager, I got really into music, and then after high school, I went into recording school, and then I went to music school, so I have a bunch of really fancy pieces of paper that tell me I'm a musician. And so then I started this recording studio, and what happens when you take your creative outlet and make it your career is some of the creativity gets pulled back from that because you're working for clients and that kind of stuff. I guess if you were specifically only making the stuff for yourself, maybe it's not quite like that, but in my case, I'm running a studio, I'm making music for other people. So after 5 years of that, or 4 years of that, I felt like I was being drawn to find something where I could be creative for myself, and every time that I tried to do my own music, it felt a little bit like work. It felt like I was just extending my work day. So I got really interested in like iPhone photography and started doing like more editing on my phone, and like got a pile of apps and probably spent money on them too, which was probably a bad idea. But I got into this whole idea of like, photography and visuals. And then of course, after that, videography came, and then I found the whole YouTube thing, and the rest is pretty much history. It's funny, I like to tell this story where when I started getting into the YouTube community, it was because I was trying to learn how to shave with a safety razor. It's like an old school kind of razor, and I just found this one guy who would just shave for 10-15 minutes, and he would just talk at the camera, or like while he was doing it, he's looking in the mirror and he's talking while he's doing it. He's really funny, and I think he was a voice actor or something, so he's like personable and that kind of thing. And that was like what drew me to the YouTube community. And it just happened to be at the same time that I was also starting to get obsessed with photography and videography, and so then the two just came together, and I started to find other channels that were based around YouTube as well as like photography and videography, and that's kind of where my channel has ended up. I definitely live in Adobe, mostly because I use it for work. We have the Adobe Creative Suite at work, and so I just kind of I learned that, and that's what I continue to use now, with its pros and cons, of course. I'm a Sony user. I use a Sony a6500 is kind of my main camera, and this a6000 is my B cam. I rocked the a6000s. I had 2 of them for probably the first year that I was on YouTube, and then finally picked up the 6500. I'm a Lightroom mobile user as well. For my photography stuff, I like to, if I want to get it up quick, I'll do it in that. And then I love the Google Suite. I know it's not really related to what everything else is. I use an iPhone, but I use all the Google apps. I feel like Google has a really strong set of apps that they all connect nicely. And even though I'm not on an Android phone, they still they just work better to me than the built-in iOS stuff. I mean, one of my favorite things that I've heard said, and that I try and hold on to as much as possible, is the idea of done not perfect. And when I first started my YouTube channel, I think I made 2 videos that I didn't post first. And I knew, and before I even started them, I knew that it was like, hey, these are to learn. The first couple of videos are just so that I can learn what I'm doing, see what happens, like get through that process. If they're good enough, I'll post them. And I think I went through 2 before I decided that, okay, the third one was like good enough to post. But there's definitely this idea of like deciding when it's good enough. And my third one, by no means, I went back and watched it recently, and it wasn't anything incredible, but it was good enough that I felt comfortable posting it. And so there's finding that line where you feel like, okay, this is good enough to put out there, and then I'll improve from there. And getting content out there, I think, is really important. And a lot of people are either too perfectionistic or not at all. And I think everyone could use some help trying to find that balance. And it took me some time too to try and figure out where that was. And luckily I had the music stuff behind me that could feed into that. I learned so much from music that going into the YouTube thing, it's like I had so many tools already in place. Other than that, just create lots. Create as much as you can, whether you post it or not. I think that you should just be like creating and being creative all the time if you can. And when you walk down the street, be seeing as if you're creating something, even if you don't have a camera or a microphone on you, just like constantly be doing it. Yeah, I mean, if anyone wants to find me, they can go to youtube.com/Dunnadidit, D-U-N-N-A did it. The idea was that it's everything that I do. So, and all my social media is that. If they want to find Resonate, it's just resonatemusic.ca.